have managed to get the Honorable Alva Baptiste. Yes, I can see his face right there. And for those of you who are following on Facebook, you'll also be able to view him as well. Thanks so very much, sir. And are you hearing us loud and clear?
I am hearing you. Are you hearing me, Alex?
Yes, perfect. Thanks very much for joining us here at the lunchroom. And of course, apologies for the technical difficulties a little earlier on, but I'm sure we'll be able to
Yeah.
make do with the time that we have for this program. Welcome to the
Yes.
lunchroom, sir.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to all your viewers. Good afternoon to St. Lucians, both at home and abroad. And of course, my constituents of the People's Republic of Labri. And I'm speaking from Auger right across to Lahore.
Wonderful. And of course, thanks for joining us here as well. Now, over the weekend, of course, the fifth year anniversary of the government elections of 2016 was witnessed, and we saw parties on both the reds and the yellows were out and about in different forms and fashion. It was, in fact, dubbed Pan Sunday by your party. Tell us about that experience. Where were you yesterday? What was the mood in Labria on the ground?
Well, the mood in Labri was one that people are just waiting to exhale. People want a government that will begin to put people first, to begin to address the pressing and legitimate concerns, especially with the problems associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. So, no doubt, it was massive celebration, a period, of course, a celebration ending what they consider to be the 5-year term of the United Workers' Party. And as far as Laborians are concerned, and of course, that may be the mood of other constituencies, is that from today onward, we are entering year 6, which does not belong to the United Workers' Party. And the time has come for them to give way to a legitimate government, one that will return this country to normalcy, return macroeconomic stability and fiscal sanity, to give us the space to tackle with immediacy the problems of the people of this country.
Now, Honorable Alva Baptiste, I also understand that today is the 105th birthday anniversary of Sir George F.L. Charles, the founder of your party. And
Certainly.
earlier on, in fact, we heard from a clip from the Prime Minister from the Flubbo Forum last night, remembering and speaking about how they went into a session and they actually thought about and reflected on the period of Sir John Compton. It seems that the United Workers' Party speaks a lot more of the legacy of Sir John Compton than the Labour Party speaks of the legacy of Sir George F.L. Charles. Tell us a little bit about what you think is his contribution to the development of St.
Well,
Lucia.
well, certainly, Calix, I do not expect the United Workers' Party to accentuate anything good as far as the St. Lucia Labour Party is concerned. The history is to try to insult the truth of our work, try to insult the Labour Party as much as possible. But of course, you cannot revise history. Bringing new perspectives to the past, it's okay, because it's the very lifeblood of historical understanding. But to try to revise history is certainly an espoir malpapai exercise. Having said so, let me acknowledge, the contribution of this great man, the founding father of our party, the person who was largely foremost in fostering the birth and initial dynamics of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Sir George Frederick Lawrence Charles, who was born on the 7th of June, 1916, and of course, left us in June of 26, 2004. As history would record, Calix, the founding father of our party went to St. Mary's College, and after he migrated to Aruba, where he was exposed to trade union activities. And upon his return to St. Lucia in 1945, he championed the cause of workers at the VG site, now the VG airport. He was employed at the time as a timekeeper. His solidarity with the workers propelled him to General Secretary of the St. Lucia Workers Cooperative Credit Union. That was the first credit union in the country. After that, he continued to mobilize and organize workers and continue to fight for bread, justice, and freedom for them. In 1948, he was elected to the Castries City Town Board as a trade union representative. In 1950, consistent with the democratic process and his burning ambition to advance the cause of not just the workers of this country, but the people of this country, he and his father, James Charles, were among the personalities that really organized the St. Lucia Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party, since that time, 1950, became the dominant force in St. Lucia over a decade. And of course, the Labour Party continued to emphasize workers' rights and more autonomy or independence for St. Lucia. In 1951, we had the first general elections and the first on the adult suffrage. And the Labour Party won 5 out of 8 seats against the middle-class PPP. Sir George Charles's first resolution as an elected member was for legal recognition of the right to paid leave, which was rejected by the colonial authorities, by the way, colleagues. In 1954, again, there was another election and he was victorious. The struggles of Sir George Charles led to a series of constitutional reforms, obtaining ministerial government system. And of course, Sir George Charles became the first chief minister after the 1960 reform, as well as the first minister for education and social affairs. So you recognize that Sir George Charles placed tremendous emphasis on the Labour Party as a whole on education. That's why he held the portfolios of education and social affairs until April of 1964. Social development has always been a core principle, a core value, and a core policy of the St. Lucia Labour Party, because it's about improving the well-being of every individual in society, not just labor rights, but everybody, irrespective of which party you support, of every individual in society, so that they can reach their full potential. Because our founding father knew full well that the success of a society is linked to its well-being, and that is the well-being of each and every citizen. Social development means investing in people, colleagues. The families will do well, and the whole of society will benefit. And therefore, every time the Labour Party is in opposition, it would continue to advance the cause of the workers, go into the parliament and advocate for appropriate legislation to benefit the people of this country, or when in government, they pass appropriate legislation to impact positively on the lives of the people of this country. And so, to this great man, we must recognize his contribution, charting initially the course away from colonial rule toward independence. And so the United Workers' Party will not speak to that very important history, but instead would play the politics with the founding father of the UWP, that he broke away from the Labour Party and joined up with the PPP in 1964. So he had his NLM merged with the PPP to form the United Workers' Party. So
we see a lot of emphasis being placed on the South of late. The United Workers' Party had its swearing-in ceremony down there. Of course, we've heard about all the projects that are going to be coming there. But again, it's very interesting because for persons who know the history, I think it was back in 1961, again, yes, during that George Charles era, that entire area, which had been in fact excised and provided to the U.S. government for the purpose of a U.S. Air base, had to be reclaimed by the St. Lucian authorities, because at that time it was still controlled by the United States government, and that was under Sir George Charles, wasn't it?
Yes, certainly. But speaking to the emphasis on Vieux Fort, colleagues, the United Workers' Party has always been playing games But the people of the South will not tolerate the games that they play. How can you come and have the swearing in ceremony at the playing field in Vieux and believe that is delivering bread, justice, and freedom to the people of Vieux? You came to Vieux, annex 1,000 acres of land, just give it away to T.O. King to desecrate the area with no jobs that would impact positively on the lives of the people of the South, or any economic activity where there is any sustainable employment. You came to the South, you destroyed the NICE program, you destroyed the fishing sector, you burdened the people with taxes in the South, you collected 150 on every gallon of gas from the time you implemented that policy. And up to now, you cannot build the equivalent of what you have collected in roads in the south of the island for 5 years. And yesterday ended the 5-year term. For 5 years, you cannot build the Majomel Road. For 5 years, you cannot build the Kate Road. For 5 years, you have stopped the Labrie Market and cannot, of course, set in motion the necessary preparation to start construction on the market, when Dr. Anthony had already placed in the estimates of 2015, 2016, as well as 2016, 2017, the monies to build that market. And it was aborted by the United Workers' Party. Whilst taking tens of millions of dollars, investing it in relocating Beauséjour and to relocate the rubbish dump. Whilst they take tens of millions of dollars to do that, people are suffering and they are getting absolutely nothing from this government. COVID came. We saw many financial institutions assisting. There were monies from the IMF, from the World Bank, from CDB, from the Taiwanese. Out of the $500 million, only $7 million were allocated for support. 7 million. And that was not support for the people of the South. That was people support for the entire country. The United Workers' Party has been a palpable failure. And no matter the level of posturing you see, they will not convince the people of the South that they should vote for the United Workers' Party. And you know, colleagues, what is even more significant is this. When the UWP entered office in 2016, they found an improved space to borrow to invest in the productive sectors of the economy. And they just squandered it.
Your lines are in contrast to what the Prime Minister has recently been saying. I think he actually has said that when the United Workers' Party came in, they inherited a country on the brink.
Well, if he inherited a country on the brink, and of course he was able to borrow so much and he was able to do so much, then maybe he has it wrong. There is something called Kachilelolish. It's a Creole construct when people talk about Zielolish, Ipa defo, Meloka Kachilelolish, Sesaki defo. The Prime Minister understands things in the direct opposite. He does not know what fiscal space is, and he does not really appreciate when he is creating a situation where there's no fiscal space. And I'll tell you, colleagues, when the Labour Party inherited this country, we inherited a fiscal deficit of almost 10%. GDP at that time was underestimated, and obviously we did not have the necessary space to really borrow quickly for us to expedite the development of the country. We were managing St. Lucia against the backdrop of a hostile external economic environment, the lingering impact of the global financial crisis. You had banks tightening lending, which affected both government and the private sector. But Dr. Anthony was able to manage the economy whilst dealing with a gradualist approach, because you could not just come in and cut spending, abruptly. because that would lead to massive unemployment and more suffering. So he had to manage the economy against that hostile external economic environment, but still deliver social services to the people of this country. And this is why the Labour Party will always be different from the United Workers' Party. We did not use the excuse of limited fiscal space for us not to deliver. We created the NICE program to provide employment for people. We had smiles. We had the laptop program, the $500 to assist secondary school students, those who are moving from primary school to enter a secondary school. We found many families with disabled family members and they cannot go to work because they are caring for their loved one. We extended support to those families. That is a government of compassion, whilst we continue to create the space for us to do more. So we move the fiscal deficit from almost 10% to 2.2% in 2015-2016 and 1.5% in 2016-2017. That gave them the fiscal space. We had two massive rebasing in 2016 and in 2019. That if we had that opportunity to rebase the economy, and if you really look at what we had during the time in terms of what the public debt to GDP ratio was, then it was 71.1%. But of course, after the rebasing, it went to 60.9%. Had we had that opportunity, we would have been able to sell the bonds so that we would be able to expedite, including the St. Jude's Hospital reconstruction project. So there was space for the UWP to deliver on the promises that they made and enough space to restructure the economy of the country. They have failed and failed miserably. Even before COVID in 2019, and they're blaming Kenny Anthony, Labour Party and COVID. Let us go before COVID. 2019, the economy contracted. You had a negative 0.5% in the economy. That had nothing to do with COVID. It had everything to do with the mismanagement of the economy, the incompetence of the incumbent administration. And therefore, all they know is how to pursue unsustainable policies. So today, they made promises then in 2016. They couldn't fulfill it. They couldn't fulfill those promises while they had the fiscal space. It's not today. When you have the debt to GDP ratio of almost 90%, and we have not yet put in all of the debt, all of the borrowings, because
right, I want to ask you about that in a little bit.
Yes.
The Honorable Alva Baptiste regarding the airport, which of course
Yes.
has that massive amount of debt as well. And
that's right.
Of course,
that's right.
That you're very passionate about in terms of aviation.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, when
we're due for a break, however, I'm not sure if you could just hold that your thoughts and take a breather and maybe get a bit of water, because we have a bit of a break for our weather. But as soon as we're done, we're going to come straight back to that issue regarding that. Thanks very much.
No.
And welcome back to the lunchroom. And we are speaking with the Honorable Alva Baptiste. He is the Member of Parliament for Labrie Auger. And he is, in fact, no doubt going to be contesting the next general election, looking for, I believe, is it your third term or your fourth term? A third term, I think, heading up into for the 2021 general elections. Honorable Alva Baptiste, are you with us? Oh, I think your mic might be muted.
Are you hearing me now,
okay.
Kali?
Yes, we're hearing you now. Thanks very much. Yes, indeed. Now, you, of course, served as the External Affairs Minister in the former administration. And we know that is a post which is expected quite often to go out and to seek funding and to get grants and support for the country. And no doubt, I think you'll be able to tell us about all of the work that you did in that regard. We, of course, have seen a different type of approach here with the current administration. Lots of borrowing, not so much in terms of getting new grants. Tell us a little bit about your concerns about this issue with respect to debt, and can we, in fact, find other ways to finance the development of our country without borrowing as much?
Okay, before the break, Alex, we were speaking about Hiwanora. So are you going to abandon that particular subject matter and want to
Oh,
deal directly with the unsustainable policies?
well, I think that's connected actually because of the whole issue of debt. So we can
Yes,
definitely still talk
yes.
about we are now within that
So,
context as well.
right. So let me indicate, Calix, that if the next election will not be a beauty contest, it's about rescuing the country. And so the United Workers' Party cannot, after that fiscal mess they have placed us in, to just masquerade as if nothing has happened and parade on stage as if we are heading into another beauty contest. I think the time has come. And as I said before, we are starting year 6 from today. So the 5 years of the United Workers' Party has passed. But what they are doing is still detrimental to the economic health of the country. For example, the rents, we rent double under this administration. And this is unsustainable. We see the Diane Mall and we hear about guarantees of even more rent for that particular purpose. Like government is actually committing itself to renting. So
Right.
we have at least $600 million for an airport that is not only increasing our public debt to GDP ratio, but limiting SLASP's ability to maneuver. Those policies undoubtedly are unsustainable. Increasing cost in the healthcare sector is bad news because we cannot continue to give Health City millions of dollars. So here is what we can say, because I know time is limited, Calix. There is a need for Honorable Philip Joseph P. as leader of the opposition and leader of our party and an economist, an experienced politician, to assume the levers of power. And if you can distill from his budget presentations as well as major other policy statements, you'll see that he accentuates the need for our new government, which is the SLP government, to undertake a comprehensive review of the fiscal situation of government and to arrest the unsustainable policies pursued by the UWP. There will be need to ensure that our government puts in place sound fiscal policies that will reverse, Calix, the negative, unsustainable trend we are witnessing with widening fiscal deficits and exponential increases in public debt. Now, given the fiscal situation that we are confronted with, there will be a need to take a gradualist approach to clean up this mess. We may need to set fiscal targets, Calix, for the deficits and the public debt going forward for each budget year. And this is within the sphere of competence of the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre. It is expected that as the deficit begins to narrow and the economy begins to recover, we will create fiscal space for public sector fiscal performance. We will need to critically examine the expenditure policies of the government and remove wasteful expenditures which have little or no impact on the government. We'll need to cut back on the massive increases in consultancies and review all agreements that this government has signed, which has resulted, Calix, in significant increases in expenditure. Example, the Permandu unit in the Prime Minister's office. The agreement with the Health Cayman Group, which costs millions of dollars. We will need to put brakes, like I said, on runaway increases in expenditure like rent, which has doubled during the government's tenure. We will need to make better use, and that is where we come into how we navigate the external environment. Make use of concessional funds available to the government through the World Bank's IDA allocations. So this is an area that the new government will have to go into. All right. We are aware that IDA 18 is ongoing and IDA 19 may have been programmed. We will need to review what adjustments and reprioritization can be made to reflect the policies of the St. Lucia Labour Party government. We will need, Calix, to undertake a similar exercise with other funding allocations, including the Caribbean Development Bank. We will need to review and indeed adjust our bilateral government programs to undertake some of our own programs to bring relief to the people of this country and to rescue the island. The government has sadly been lagging behind in its attempt to access the Green Climate Fund and the International Renewable Energy Agency. Therefore, the Labour Party will put in place the institutional framework to access more expeditious funding from these new funding sources. I wish to point out, colleagues, that with the US government under the leadership of President Biden now rejoining the Paris Agreement, it is expected that a large amount of funding to assist developing countries with funding for climate mitigation and adaptation will become available. And we need to position ourselves to access these funds. And as you know, climate change is now a very significant global issue affecting the world, and seeds like St. Lucia is already being affected and will continue to be affected, although we are not the ones who contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions, but we are undoubtedly being impacted heavily. So it is therefore expected that large amounts of funding will be made available through the GCF. And we also need to look at the funding available, colleagues, coming from the European Union and of course, the United Kingdom, which has now exited the EU.
Right. But Honorable Baptiste, yes. Are you not concerned though that given what we've seen with respect to some of the projects like St. Jude Hospital, so much grant funding being pumped into it from so many different countries, providing the development there, and it was just effectively abandoned. We saw a similar situation with respect to the meat processing facility at Beausejour and Vieux-Fort. Again, I think over $20 million of grant funding provided from the Republic of China, and that facility has just been abandoned as well. Are you afraid, concerned that donor countries are going to be looking at St. Lucia with a greater degree of trepidation, that they may not actually be willing to provide support?
As long as the United Workers' Party remains in office, we will not be able to create an improved framework to attract funding and support from other countries, undoubtedly. So, colleagues, countries are looking at us very, very closely. Even our corruption perception index, which has deteriorated, all right, is an perception index as to how we manage the affairs of the country, the ease of doing business, all of those factors, how the government responds to the people of this country, how sensitive the government is to national mood is also a factor. And so when countries try to assist other jurisdictions with assistance, they would look at how you are managing the economy, how the people are impacted by it. And obviously, it is well documented that only the FFF empire has benefited from the largesse. And no doubt, from that standpoint, you look at the United Workers' Party just wasting assistance from foreign governments, even St. Jude's. When I was the Minister for External Affairs, I got $13 million for the Dennery Water Project. I got another $7.1 million to assist with St. Jude's. And obviously, when people who contributed toward the rehabilitation of a very important project for us see that demolition of buildings are taking place, they commission a report, an audit of St. Jude's. The report said we can salvage the building and continue working on the building. They just decided to turn their backs on the building and do something else, which will take a significant amount of money. And if you recall, colleagues, I said during the debate on the estimates that when I look at this monstrosity, that will probably take another $100 million or more to complete. Now we just passed a budget. And I'm sure the government, given the tight situation in the country, may be tempted to come to Parliament with a supplementary budget. And don't be surprised if they want to come to Parliament to do that based on the kind of monies that they want to borrow to continue the election construction. Now,
Honorable Baptiste, you're still expecting government to come to Parliament to borrow more again?
I'm just saying, don't be surprised. This government, has violated every single rule in the book. Convention, they don't care about convention. The law is only convenient. when it suits their purpose to do this and that, and protocols are important only when it is not to the advantage. But anything that is to the advantage, you don't care whether they're breaking the law or not. We have a reckless administration, and the time is up. Yesterday was the last day. You were elected for 5 years. Do not come to parliament with further borrowing. Give the new prime minister in waiting, the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre, the member for Castries East, leader of our party and leader of the opposition, the space to come and present the supplementary budget, to ease the squeeze on the people of this country, and for us to re-establish normalcy in this country. When you look at even our diplomatic relations, external relations, that's in a mess. And we must get into office and almost go back to normalizing external relations. We are in a very dark place. We are in a very bad place. And it is not just political talk. Go and look at the numbers. Our public debt to GDP ratio is out of control. In fact, when you look at the OECS countries, 40% of the total debt was incurred by St. Lucia. With a government borrowing so much, you should probably have the lowest contraction in the OECS. You have the largest contraction, which speaks to the ineffective use of funds in the economy of the country. And so, colleagues, we cannot afford another year of this government, far less another 5-year term. And therefore,
Honorable Baptiste, do you
yes,
think that the average person, maybe at Testanier Highway, or maybe up in Lahore or Bas, do you think that they completely understand this issue of debt? Do
I'll
they
tell you.
understand this issue of after joy comes sorrow? Because
I'll tell you.
they're seeing roads being built, and they're seeing, I suppose, projects coming along. And many people say, well, that's good. We're seeing things happening.
Yes.
Do you think
I'll
that they
tell you what.
understand this issue?
Well, let me tell you something. Praise God that Laborians are not stupid. Laborians are smart. Laborians can understand things. And they have not forgotten how they suffered for 5 years under this government, where they stopped the market, where the monies were there for the market. They stopped all the contracts under the CDB program to build certain roads in various parts of the constituency, in Pom, at Black Bay, Labrie Village, and in other parts of the constituency. They know that. They know they had to pay an extra $1.50 on a gallon of gas for roads, specifically for roads, and they have not seen those roads. And if the government comes on the eve of this election and build a road, they will still be asking for the balance of the monies, because they contributed millions of dollars to the public purse for road construction, and the government has not built any roads for them. The recreational facilities that could have been built, and instead were monies diverted to T.O. King and the FFF, right? Certainly they are aware of that. And no amount of little kakada, no amount of little packet of groceries or a food voucher will change the minds of my fellow Laborians. And I agree with the young man who made the song, about his district representative. He said, they knew throughout the term who they came to for assistance, who were there with them during that critical moment when they had to go to the hospital, when they had to send the children to school. They had all the emergencies dealing with lands or dealing with electricity or water. They know who walked that very important period with them. And I'll tell you what, colleagues, you see me? I will never give anybody a hamper and snap the photograph and put it on television to show the world that I'm giving. My late grandmother, Attilia Fletcher, always said to me, you must give and give and give even when you have nothing to give. It means that the ultimate sacrifice you must make for people to enjoy a better life. So when we are passing through this world, we must give to others so that we are sustainable in the long run in the form of the generosity that we extend to other people. And I am always going to emulate the fine example of the great architects of Labrie's development. Senator Agafa Japanel, Senator for Life, the late Rudy John, the late Hilary Dasheville, the great Watson Louis, who is there, who took our credit union, as the manager working, giving them the credit union Kudme. I being the youngest member of the board at the time, and see that credit union grow from strength to strength to take care of our business in the People's Republic of Labrie. You know why we have this today? Because they never left. They never migrated and go overseas and be in bourgeois retreat. They stayed in Labrie and they made the sacrifice so that other generations of Laborians can enjoy a better life. Alva Romanus Baptiste is going to sacrifice material comfort. He is going to take mepui and abuse and lies to ensure that he makes his contribution to the development of his constituents, the development of his constituency, the development of his country, the Caribbean, and of course the world in terms of my work. And therefore, yes, and therefore, my brother, and therefore, my people shall not be fooled. And they understand that this government has precipitated a fiscal mess, and no matter what promise they make, they will not be able to fulfill that promise. It is time for the Labour Party to come in to put people first.
Now, Honorable Baptiste, I'm not sure if there's a horse race going on right now at DSH, but I'm told that the cabinet is meeting down at DSH today in Vefor. We've seen a lot of promises being made by the St. Lucia Labour Party as well as the United Workers' Party. In the case of the United Workers' Party, cruise ship ports, racetracks, hotels. On the side of the St. Lucia Labour Party, we've been hearing about, taking away facilities fees for payment, no CXE fees for English and math, removal of, I think, is it up to $4,000 per month if you won't be paying income tax.
Right.
We're hearing, of course, a lot of people asking, well, but where is the money going to be coming from in the case of the St. Lucia Labour Party and some of your proposals?
Okay, Calix. You remember a few moments ago, I went through some of the measures that can be distilled from the leader of the opposition's pronouncements, both in Parliament and other major addresses. I must tell you, Philip Joseph Pierre, whilst people were in during COVID, you know what preoccupied him was that rescue plan, how he's going to rescue this country. And the measures that must be taken to ease the squeeze immediately on the people of this country, whilst he restructured the economy, whilst he adjusts the economy, so that we can expand jobs in St. Lucia. We have a history of creating jobs in the country. So the pronouncements of Philip Joseph Pierre are consistent with the history of the Labour Party in terms of delivering to the people of this country. Okay? Now, the UWP, the promises they are making are certainly in consonance with promises that have made in the past. Let's start from recent history. The UWP promised so many things that they have not delivered. But this is the same prime minister who promised so many hotels, but he can't even build a cage thus far. This is the very same prime minister from the same UWP, okay, who have promised all sorts of things to the people of this country, but cannot deliver. The same prime minister who promised to build so many islands in the sea, promised this and promised that. So anything the prime minister says, cruise, port, this and that, must fall into that general category of just storybook, stuff. There's a Western that talk about storybook beginning. And that's what it is all about, bluff and fluff. So they are now using those empty promises to plead tearfully for restored confidence in the failed policies. The United Workers' Party must go, Calix. It must go for the sake of St. Lucians, for the sake of St. Lucian, for the sake of the other OECS. If this level of fiscal indiscipline continues, it may impact the rest of the currency union. Are you aware of that? It is, the EC dollar is still what it is today because we have the other islands. But if it was just St. Lucia, we would have been in trouble. But over time, research has shown that free riding can lead to problems for the currency. And therefore, we need to return this country to fiscal stability with lightning rapidity. It is not within the sphere of competence of the UWP to do so. There is no commitment to do so. In fact, the unsustainable policies are going to put us in trouble as we go along. Over the past 5 years, incrementally, they have destroyed the country. We need to reverse that trend. We need to bring back the Labour Party. We need Philippe Joseph Pierre to deal with the levers of power and to return this country to macroeconomic stability. And I say to you today, Alex, I have every confidence in Philippe Pierre to deal with the business of the economy. And I will give him my fullest support as we transform the economy and to deliver more to the people of this country, including my constituents.
Honorable Baptiste, of course, we don't have very much time. In fact, we're over time already as it is. We're hearing some predictions from the Honorable Guy Joseph. I think he said that the United Workers' Party is winning 15-2. What are your predictions for the upcoming general elections, if you were to call out some numbers for us?
Well, I am not an individual who's generally boastful where election results are concerned. But one thing I can tell you is very clear in my mind, that the people of this country understands clearly. The people understand clearly when enough is enough. And as we speak, the people of this country understand that this government must be dislodged from the seat of power. And therefore, I am not expecting an 11-6. I am expecting a performance beyond that, between 12 and 17 seats in that particular corridor for the St. Lucia Labour Party on behalf of the people of this country, to deliver to them and to return respect and dignity to St. Lucia.
We've been hearing quite a lot of calls on this program, persons asking for changes to be made to the Constitution, and they want to see those matters taken up by whoever forms the next government. Again, lots of promises were made by the United Workers' Party for a fixed date for elections, for the ability to fixed term for prime ministers, things like that. Would we be getting a commitment from the St. Lucia Labour Party to that effect?
Well, certainly, as the MP for Labrie and as a candidate, I am not just going to jump and say to you, Calix, yes, we are going to do this or we are going to do that. But certainly, in keeping with the way that our leader and the leader of the opposition go about things, he will discuss with his colleagues. He will also have a wider discussion with the people of this country to ensure that whatever constitutional amendments that we make is something that prime ministers just cannot overturn. So it calls for a wider engagement with the St. Lucian people as to what they would like. But certainly, that whole issue of a fixed date is something that the Labour Party is discussing, will explore with the people of this country. Because as far as we are concerned, the time has come for more dialogue with the people of this country, the academics, faith-based organization, civil society, the youth groups in this country. Let's have a frank discussion on the type of amendments one would like to see in the constitution of this country. For example, the protection of national assets. The problem that we are having with the UWP government, National Trust, the people of this country, where the UWP believes that it can just go and demolish any building. It does not care what significance it has, whether it's of cultural value, whether it's of historical significance. They really do not care. As far as they are concerned, if it's a weed in the plan, they will just uproot it. I believe that the kind of constitutional reform should protect the people of this country from political madness.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Alva Baptiste. Of course, we've been learning so much. Some people are commenting about the catchile lolish phrase that you used a little earlier on. So I think you need to keep us here in the lunchroom. Perhaps I'm sure, give us a few more dishes indeed. But some parting words from you, though, before we end the program.
Yes, one thing I will say, Calix, is this. The time is at hand. The time is now. The prime minister has no more legitimacy to occupy the seat of government, he and his colleagues. They have failed the people of this country. And obviously, I am looking forward to the Prime Minister doing the honorable thing to call the elections and give the Labour Party and Philip Joseph Pierre as Prime Minister to put people first and to try to salvage the economy, try to rescue this country very quickly because they have placed us in the mouth of disaster. I want to say further to every constituency to be ready for elections. Put everything in place. Just await further instructions from the leadership of the St. Lucia Labour Party. But get ready.
Honorable Alva Baptiste, the Member of Parliament for Labrie Auger, thank you so very much for being our guest here at the lunchroom today.